Welcome to Programming for Designers. This is Trish Ladd, WIP 400 Platt College. Programming Review, Part 2. Logic. The if statement is a very powerful tool to check values and compare values. Here we have a description of a pretty basic situation that would require some logic. There are only two mutually exclusive conditions. The user is either logged in or is not logged in. This is the perfect place for a conditional statement to be used in code. The if statement is the most commonly used branching structure. So if the condition is true, then execute the code between the curly braces. Optionally, you can add an else statement. If this condition is true, do statement 1. Else, if the condition is false, do statement 2. So a lot of times you'll look at if-else statements as what are the possible conditions. In this case, it is pretty straightforward. The user is logged in or isn't. Here we see if the user is logged in. If they are, show them the proper navbar. If they are not, show them the standard navbar. So how we can see this in PHP? Let us pretend for a moment that we have pre-written a function called userisLoggedIn, and that function returns a value of true or false. We can then use that function to determine whether or not the user is logged in. If the user is logged in evaluates as true, then we're going to use an include to show the user navbar. Else, we're going to use an include to show the basic navbar. So remember that I said you'll look at different conditions and have different things happen under those conditions? Here we are comparing the values of two numbers. What are all the possibilities of this kind of comparison? The first one is the first number is less than the second number. The first number and second number are the same value. And last but not least, the first number is greater than the second number. So how do we compare or check against multiple possibilities? Is through the if, else if, and else statement. Else if is a way to check another comparison when the first comparison is not true. Else if always follows an initial if comparison. The if and the following else if comparisons are checked from top to bottom, ending when the first true condition is found. It will not go through the stack to find another, more accurate condition. Order matters. Comparison operators. So here's where we check against all of our different values. In almost all comparison operators, you will need at least two symbols. As you can see, less than and greater than do not need to have two symbols. But equal does. We need to compare to see if value 1 is the same as value 2. If they are the same, then what comes out is rendered as true. Not equal. If those two items are not the same, then they will come out as true. Are these two things not equal? Yes, true. Less than, greater than. Pretty standard for math. Less than or equal to is 5 less than or equal to 5? Yes, then that's true. Is 6 less than or equal to 5? Then that's false. Greater than or equal to? Is 6 greater than or equal to 5? That's true. Is 4 greater than or equal to 5? That is not true. And then the triple equals, where it must identify whether or not two items are the same value and type. If you have the number 5 as a character in a string and you use the triple equals to compare it against a integer type, they will not be the same. This will then be false. But if you have a number 5 and you compare it to a number 5, it will be true. Logical operators. We can compare more than one thing at the same time. When we use the and that can be A and D or the ampersands, it checks to see if all the arguments are true. If they are, then the whole thing renders as true. Or we'll check to see if either argument is true. If either argument is true, then the whole thing goes through. Not basically says, is this statement false? That's exactly the result we wanted. And it executes the code. XOR checks to see if only one but not both or multiple arguments are true. If only one is true, then it goes through. And as I mentioned before, the ampersands the same as and the pipes are the same as or. We see the ampersand, and the two pipes in JavaScript. So let's check on learning again. What are the results of these statements? If 0 is less than 1 and chicken does not equal beef, is that true or false? That's true, because 0 is less than 1 and chicken does not equal beef. So let's look at this statement. So is 5 times 2 the same value and type as 10? Is 2 greater than or equal to 2? This whole statement renders as true. Even though they are both true, at least one of them is true, and that's all that matters. Now this one's tricky. If 0 is less than 10, XOR 10 is greater than 0, will this render as true? It renders as false because both statements are true. In XOR, only one should be true, but not both. Last but not least, if 5 is less than or equal to 10 divided by 2, and absolute 10 is not equal to 10, is this true? It is false. The function ABS stands for absolute value, and absolute value removes all signs. So 10 is equal to 10, and therefore the statement is false because we used the ampersands to check to see if both statements were true. The switch statement. The switch statement is similar to the if statement, but you can use it to make a more succinct check. The switch statement allows for an expression to be compared against multiple cases of values. The server is looking for a true statement for the expression. In addition, if no case is found to match the expression, a default option may be given at the end of the switch statement. The default statements are executed when no other case matches the expression. Break is traditionally used at the end of each case. This is to let the programming know that you are moving on to the next case comparison. So, we have a variable called userType. We can check on the userType's value. In this case, we're going to check to see if the user that's been logged in is an admin. We can then send them this message, "Welcome, all-powerful administrator." And then we use the word break to let the program know that we are done with the switch. If they are not an admin, it will check to see if the value of user type is author. If it is, then the message that is sent to the user is "Hello there, author." Break basically tells the computer that we're on to the next case. If neither of these is true, then it will go to the default, which is "Howdy, basic user." So let's check again on learning. What statement is used to denote the end of a case? Break. What option may we use if no other case satisfies the expression? Default. Let's talk about loops. PHP has many types of loops: the while, the do while, and the for loop. These are the basic constructs for the three types of loops used in PHP. In the next few slides, we will show examples on how to use them. The while loop is the simplest of looping structures. The condition is checked to be true, and as long as it's true, the block of code inside the while loop is executed. Once false, the loop stops. Do while. Very similar to the while loop, only it checks the condition at the end. So it runs the code and then checks. The for loop is a little more complicated than the rest. The for loop allows for a starting value, a condition, and an operation, all within the main expression section of the loop. This will be shown more clearly on the following slides. The necessary components of every loop are a variable that stores the current count of the loop. This is referred to as the initializer, as it starts the count at its initial value. Next is the comparison or test expression that must evaluate as true or false, and the increment. Last but not least would be the body of code block that executes through each turn of the loop. This is the while loop. Note, we have the initializer outside of the loop, and that is so that the value is not reset each time the loop is run. We need to have it update each time or our condition will never become false. So here we are telling the loop to execute while count is less than or equal to 5. Print the value of count each time you are run, and then add 1 to the value of count. The output to the page will look like the text in red. So the first time through the loop, we check, is count less than 5? Count is currently 1, so the comparison is true. We proceed to the code block. The first statement is to print the value of count. It outputs the value of 1. Statement 2 adds 1 to the value of count, and the loop is run again. The second time, it compares count to see if it is less than 5. It is, so it repeats the code block. It keeps doing this as long as the condition is true. Once the count reaches 6, the loop stops because the condition we are now checking against returns as false. The do-while loop executes at least once before the condition is evaluated. In this example, the variable does not meet the condition and therefore the loop is terminated. We're going to print out count is the value of count, which is currently 10. We add 1 to the value of count, that's 11. While, then we check the value of count. Is count less than or equal to 5? No, then the loop stops and does not run again. The for loop example. So for count is equal to 1, we're going to start out with that as our starting value, just like we have in the other slides. If count is less than or equal to 5, keep going and add 1 to count. So here we go. Count is equal to 1. First time through the loop, that's what gets printed out. Count is 1. Then the second time through the loop, count is 2. Then the third time, fourth time, fifth time. And after that, count has a value of 6 and the loop stops running. Count plus plus is just the same thing as count equals count plus 1. It's just faster to type. What you want to avoid is an infinite loop. Remember how I mentioned that the count for the while loop was outside of the while loop, and that way it could be modified every time the loop was run? In this case, the condition never goes to false, so that while loop will never end. So what are the 3 basic types of loops? While, do while, and for. What is the term for a loop that executes forever? An infinite loop. So in summary, if, else, and switch statements are all ways to compare conditions and have the program do something based off of the current situation, such as if a user is logged in or not. Comparison operators describe all the ways that we can compare 2 items. Logic operators let us check against multiple conditions without nesting conditional statements. Remember, AND means both arguments must be true, OR means either or both arguments can be true, XOR means only one argument and no more than one argument must be true. The ampersands and the pipes are effectively and OR symbolically. Then we talked about loops. How to set or start with the initializer, how to increment, and how to check to see if the condition is still true. All of these pieces are important in order for any of these types of loops to work. All loops do the same basic things, but are slightly different in the way that they operate. The do while, for example, runs at least once before checking to see if it needs to run again. And it goes without saying, infinite loops are bad. There are many more resources available to you as a PHP coder. Some are listed here, and many are not. I recommend that you use a search engine to find relevant sites to your problem and troubleshoot from there. Happy coding!